Hilchas Shchita, Perik Chamishi. Kvar biyanu behilchas Isurim Macholas. Shahatreifo ha'amura b'teira hi aneta lomos. There's the word treifa, even though the pashto touch of the word treifa means that it was a behemoth that was attacked by another animal. It was his nitrava. Nitrava is miloshin tarif teiref yesef. To say so it was nitrava, it was attacked, it was preyed upon by another animal, and that caused it some damage, or it was torn apart. You're saying no. A treifa amura b'teira doesn't mean necessarily it was attacked by another animal. He aneta lomos, and v'linamar treifa ela shedibur akosu beheva. The pasuk is talking about in a regular situation. Kigei shetorfa ariyo kiyetzebei v'shavra v'adayin lemesa. In other words, it was attacked by a lion or a similar type of animal, and now it's in a matzav where it was injured to the extent where it was neta lomos. Now that's one type of a treifa where it was injured through another animal, and that would be called a drusa, as we'll soon see. It's a treifa of a drusa. And he says, "V'yesham chaloi macherim." Besides this Indian that another animal attacked it, and that would be called a drusa, and that caused an injury, as we'll soon learn. There's other illnesses in Yerula, if those will occur, is also the chashav treifa. That's also as a din of a treifa, even though it wasn't attacked by another animal. But if something happened and that caused an illness, so that also is called a treifa. V'hein halacha l'meish misinai. And the treifas, what are called the treifas, is halacha l'meish misinai. Ushmeina minei treifas namru l'meish misinai. There's 8 types of treifas. Ve'elohen, there's a drusa. But the Rambam is going to touch its drusa because it was attacked by another animal. And the animal, as we'll soon see, put its claws into the victim animal. And there's nekuva, there's a hole in certain organs of the animal. Chseir, it's missing. Netula, again, it was taken away. Psuke, it was cut. Krua, torn. Nefula, it fell. Ushvura, and broken. Al Koparam, the Rambam is going to take choice all the treifas that there are shmeina treifas. Shmeina treifas. So when it says treifa is talking about pashtus or drusa. Abulapel, the drusa is only an example. The example is that we're talking about a type of injury which causes that it should be neitalamus. Now the Rambam here says neitalamus, and the Rambam earlier in the Machol Sasuris and Perik Daled also says neitalamus. The Rambam doesn't say the shir of Yud Beis Chedesh over here. But the Magad Mishnah brings over there that from the Gemara and Chulin that what's type neitalamus? It's neitalamus, and it's going to die within Yud Beis Chedesh. That's the shir of what's called neitalamus b'negei atreif. In the Ram La'am, he brings a siman that says don chonak nefesh. That don chonak nefesh, like the don was chonik the nefesh. That's the siman. Drus and nekuva, that's don, and chseira netula, that's the ches nun of the chonak. And then there's the krua, and then there's the nefesh. Nefesh is the nefula and the psuka and the shvura. I'll call upon don chonak nefesh. That's the siman for the 8 treifas. Aval pisha kulan alocha l'meish misinayhin is hail ve'in locha beferish b'teira ela drusa, because that's the type of treifa. Treifa means it was drusa through an animal, another animal attacked it. It's therefore hichmirba. Therefore Chazal was or machmir, even though the amas they're all alocha l'meish misinay. But nevertheless, since the treifa says mefurish, so Chazal were machmir. V'chol sofik sheyistapik b'drusa also. So if it's a sofik and a drusa, it's also. So over there, there's sometimes that the sveikim are more lekula. Mashenkin drusa, there's a suffix that's more lechumra. That's what we'll learn the Hamshich Hadvar. So I'll call upon, we're learning over here that there's a musa called a treifa. A treifa means that it's in a matzav, which something happened which causes that it's netalomus. That's netalomus, and treifa means that it was attacked through an animal. And as a result of that, the animal now, the victim, is a neitalamus. And Chazal had a Kabbalah, that there are 8 types of treifas. 8 types of treifas. And drusa, since drusa is what's really the touch of the word treifa, so therefore, as a result of that, there's more of a chumra in the drusa. Halacha dalet. Hadrusa, what's a drusa? Now just there's a treifa which is called nekuva. It has a hole. So if the behemoth sticks his hand in, or whatever part of the body, and causes to make a hole, so you don't have to come onto the din of drusa over there, there's a din of nekuva. And the kuva is a separate treifa. That's the second treifa that the Rambam calls nekuva. Masha'inkin drusa means that the behemoth stuck his paw into the animal, and as a result of that, there was a certain poison that came out through the paw, and that poison is going to cause that the animal should die. The poison that the animal left by sticking its paw into the animal, that's what's causing the animal to die. Now, also, Chazal had the Kabbalah that only certain animals are capable of causing death through the poison to other animals. In other words, if you have a lion that sticks his hand into a cow, so then the lion sticks his paw into the cow. So by sticking the paw into the cow and then pulling it out, so that will cause a certain poison that will go into this cow, and that will cause that the cow will die. And that's the union of drusa. If you're dealing with an animal that's not an ari, a different type of an animal, and it's also stuck its paws into the cow, that doesn't cause it, even though it also has a level of poison. So if it sticks it into a smaller animal, into a sheep, into a goat, so then it could cause it. Masha'in kain, if it sticks it in to a cow, it won't be able to. That's how Chazal had the Kabbalah. So it has to be an ari, to a large animal, to a behema gasa, it has to be dafka an ari. And the Maggid Mishnah says, lav dafka an ari, or something larger than an ari. It can't be something the same size of an ari, but an animal, which is, in other words, if the attacking animal is either an ari or larger than an ari, then it could cause that it should become a drusa, it should become a treifa in a behema gasa. Let's look inside. Halacha dalet. Hadrusi, what's drusa mean? Sheyitrif ho'ari u'kiyetze be'abehema. And what means a yitrif? V'yidri solebiyod, he should pounce on it with his foreleg, which is his his foreleg, and with his paw. Oy, yidris hanetz v'hanesher u'kiyetze ben aloef. Or a bird, a hawk, or an eagle pounces upon another bird. Now then the Rambam says, "Ve'ein derisa bebehema gasu b'chaye gasa." When would it be considered that the behema was pounced upon by someone that could cause it to die, that should become a treifa? That's only lari bulvat. If the ari pounced upon this behema gasa, so then the behema gasa is called a drusa. That's what's called a drusa. If he stuck his paws into the behema gasa, and also as we said, if something that's larger than a behema, than an ari, also if an animal which is larger than an ari attacked the behema gasa, it's also called a drusa. That's been a behema gasa. However, behema daka, if we're talking about a behema daka, so then min haze'ev ulamayla. It doesn't have to be an ari. It could be a wolf. It could be a wolf, or it's larger than a wolf. If it's the same size as a wolf, it wouldn't make it a drusa. Masha'inkin, if we're dealing with a behema daka, so a wolf or a behema which is larger than a wolf. When we're talking about with a young sheep or young goat, a very young, whereas in behema daka which is cotton, is afila chasul, even if it's a cat or a shual or a fox or vinamya. Or a namyan is translated as a marten, some type of like a large weasel, is yeshlan drisa. They also have a drisa, and the koshkin be'efis, and certainly chasul, shul, and namya also have drisa be'efis. This is nachamal. So when we're talking about a behema gasa, the drisa is an ari, and as we said, either also an animal which is larger than an ari, not the same size as an ari, but larger than an ari. And if you're talking about behema gasa, a behema daka, so then there has to be a wolf. It has to be a wolf or something larger than a wolf. And if you're talking about a behema daka, a small behema daka, gedoyim utloyim, so then it could even be a cat, or it could be a wolf. It could be a cat or a fox, or a nemiya. A nemiya is a marten. Is also yeshlam drisa. That's also called drisa. And the koshkim be'efes, if they could do it in gidoyim utloyim, so certainly they could be doiris and efes. In other words, what it means is that the poison that they put into these type of animals could kill them. So an ari could kill a behema gasa, a zev could kill a behemadaka with this poison, and a chasul and a shul and a namya could kill a behemadaka, which is a gedoyim mutloyim, a small behemadaka. But hanetz is a hawk. Is yeshli drisa afilu be'ev gadol mimanu. The chiddush is that when he's dairis, when a hawk is dairis, so his drisa is called a drisa, even in a bird which is larger than him. But the other oifis which are dersim, which is one of the simonim of a behema chaya, of a behema of an eif tummy, that is a dairis, is shar eifis hadersim is yeshlam drisa be'eif shekamesim. Because they could only be dairis their drisa. Knows when they pounce on an oif. So the din that should have a din of a dorus, and Mamela should have a din of a treifa, is only if it's a similar size eif, or smaller, obviously. So that's a chiddush of a netz, that a netz has a drisa in a bird which is larger than him. Now the question is, you say it's larger than him, does it also mean like mamish, a larger bird, like chicken, or avzim tarnagelim, which are much larger than the nets? Would there also be a drisa in them? Or we're talking about only that it's larger, but nevertheless, we're not talking about much larger. So that's a machlekes. It's a machlekes benigeh whether or not the nets has also a din drisa and avzim v'tarnagel. And the v'yesh l'chulda, a chulda is a weasel, drisa beifas. So before we were talking about a namia and a mia, which is like called a marten. It's like a larger type of weasel. And over here we're talking about a pashta weasel, v'yesh l'chulda, a smaller weasel, v'yesh l'chulda drisa beifas. As far as aphis is concerned, so we said a bird has. So we said as a hawk has drisa in all birds, and bechlal, and the birds that are do drisa can only do drisa in a bird which is a similar size or smaller, but not in a bird which is higher. Then there's a new din that a chulda, a weasel, also has a din drisa in oifis. So if a weasel pounces on a bird and he sticks in his front legs of this weasel, so then that's called also his front paws, so to speak, his front nails, the nails of his front leg. So that also is called drisa. That's benegei chulda. The kelev ain't drisa kolikar. A dog, there's no musig of drisa. Now v'hanetz, a hawk, which we said before, a hawk has a special din of drisa that it can even be doiris in birds which are larger than it. Is yeshli drisa b'gdoyim utloyim. So they can even be doiris in gdoyim utloyim. So in other words, gdoyim utloyim are small behema daka. From a behema daka knows a small behema daka, a young behema daka. So that could have a drisa from a net in a gdoyim utloyim. Aber over here the chiddush is v'hu sheyikev mitziparnu v'beis hachol. So normally drisa would mean if it just sticks in his paw into the flesh of the animal. So Mimela, that's in itself a drisa. It doesn't have to actually go into the cavity of the animal. There's the animal has flesh, and then there's the cavity of the animal, which inside the cavity of the animal, there's all kinds of organs that's functioning in the cavity of the animal. So drisa doesn't have to actually go into the cavity of the animal. Normally drisa just goes into the flesh of the animal. Masha'inke and benegeya for a nets to have drisa in gedoyim utloyim is only if the nets actually went into the cavity of the animal. So Bekitza, we're learning over here there's a thing called drisa, and drisa means why the animal putting its paw into the other animal. So now an ari could have a drisa and a behema gasa, and something that's larger than an ari could also have a drisa and a behema gasa. You can have a zev could have a drisa in a behema daka. A chasul and a shul and a namya could have a drisa in gedoyim utloyim, which is the young behema daka. And then there's birds. Birds can have also drisa in other birds, as long as the other bird is not larger than him. It could be the same size. And nets, there's a chiddush is that a nets can have drisa even in a bird which is larger than him. And then there's another chazak that a chulda also has a drisa beifus. Kelev never has drisa. And then there's a din that a nets can even have drisa in gedoyim utloyim, but only on the condition that it was nichnas into the halal of the gdoim mitloim. Mashenkin other dini drisa don't have to actually go into the halal. Halacha zayin ein drisa ela biyad haderef. In order for something to be drisa, it has to be from the foreleg of the deref. Avol beraglav and cheshen lef. It's the hind leg that went into the other animal that's garnished. That's ein cheshen lef. That's not called drisa. That's number one. And secondly, vein drisa ela b'tziperin, it has to be with the nail. Avol b'shein ein cheshen lef. If he went into the animal with his teeth, so that's not drisa. Elim came nikav ad beis hachol. If he bit and he came into the cavity of the behemoth, so then boitken shemanikav echad me'evarim shenetrefes b'nekivasam. That's a different din. That's not a din of drisa. The din of drisa is connected to the poison which is put into the animal through the behemoth, through the doiris. So that happens. That goes through the nail. Masha'inkin, if he bit it, so then there's another shaila. Maybe he made a hole. So we have to go check to see whether there's any perforation in any of the evarim, which are the evarim apnimi, which could become a treifa through a hole. Elam kein nikav ad beis hachol beitchen shemanikav echad min evarim shenetrefes b'nekivasam. That's din number two. And ve'ein drisa, so it has to be with the foreleg and it has to be with a tzipen. Three, ve'ein drisa ela b'kavanas hateiref. So no, the drisa is only b'kavanas hateiref. He had to have an intention to make a drisa. Avalim nafel haderis. If this deris fell, v'nishtako tziparnav b'nitraf, and he just his claws just got stuck, wedged into the nitraf, into the victim, is ein zu drisa. That's not called drisa. Drisa is only when he intended on making he intended on being teirif. That's it only works with intent. See, even though the pale, the actual eris only comes out later when he takes it out, as we'll soon learn, because it has to be that he actually took it out while he was alive. The attacker took out his claws while the victim was still alive, but nevertheless, when he takes it out, when does he leave that eris, that poison? Only when he put it in the kavana. That's the Magid Taitzus. That's number three. And number four, in other words, the doiris has to be alive when he takes out his spots. If let's say the animal pushed in his spots and venerag, and then the animal died, vadai and yode bedrusa, and his hand is still in the victim. And Velishama Tziparna Bimana, he never pulled out his nails. Ela Achar Mesa is en cheshen. We're not cheshish, because the eris comes out when he's pulling it out. So again, it has to be dafke with the foreleg, it has to be dafke with a tziperin, and it has to be that dafke was bekavona, and that has to be dafke that Michaim, he pulled it out. Now, the Ketza din adrusa, what's the din of the drusa? Kol makom shamarnu cheshen lo. And the Magid Mishnah is medayik from the Rambam that even when it's mamash adrusa, you know for sure that it says a din of a drusa. So there's always bedika can help to take it out of the din drusa. That's easy to understand from the Rambam. Is sheikh tinis anitraf. So you have to shecht the animal, the victim, ubeitkin kol hachol sheli, and you have to check the entire cavity of the animal. Mikaf yerech adakotke. In other words, from the kaf of the yerech is the legs. So from the round part of the top of the leg, in other words, the leg itself, there's nothing bechoshish. But from the round, in other words, from the entire cavity, from the kaf of the regel until the kotkin, until the head. If it's completely complete. But also reishim adrisa, and you see nothing as a result, no marks as a result of the drisha, is arezim muteres. However, even though everything, there's no holes in anything, but you still see a reishim adrisha, you see something that came as a result of the drisa, that will soon tell you, the Rambam will soon trace what that means, is arezu treifa vasurim and. Then that has a din of a treifa, because if you see the reishim hadrisa, so that's called a treifa, and that's also minatera. Now, ezu reishim hadrisa, what does reishim hadrisa mean? It means shiyadim habaser keneged bnei me'ayin. That you see a redness in the flesh keneged bnei me'ayin towards the stomach or towards the intestine. The nimek habaser keneged bnei me'ayin, and if the flesh became like disintegrated near opposite the bnei meyayin, again the intestine. Achenase kibosar sharif gerere minachabura. It becomes like the meat, a flesh, which the doctor would take away, would push away because it's flesh that decomposed, that died. Is rei nesin abasa kilu chasa. So we see that flesh kilu it's missing, and therefore the behemoth treifa. So therefore the behemoth treifa. Whereas kosof kosof, the eris is going to burn the behemoth. It's going to burn that. It's going to burn the bnei miyayim. It's going to burn the bnei miyayim. It's not concerned. It brings over here from a tesvis. It's not pshat. We're worried that there's going to become a hole in the bnei miyayim. Because if there's going to be a hole, so then it would go into the gather of nekuva. Over here, there's a concern that it's going to burn. It's going to burn the ivarim. So it's going to burn the ivarim. So that's a new psul called drusa. Halacha yud v'im doras b'siman. If the drisa was in the siman, is mishayadim mutreifa. So over here, the Kes Mishnah points out that b'nigeh the miyayim, he said, if the basar connected miyayim started becoming red, so that is already also a treifa. Masha'inkin over here is saying that the mishayadim of the simanim themselves have to be yadimu. It's not enough that the basar connected hasimonim become red, because doesn't make a treifa. Masha'inkin, if the simanim itself started becoming red, mishayadim of the simanim themselves start becoming red, is also, that's already a treifa. Or the risos mashu, as long as there was a mashu, there was a small drisa, and then it started becoming red, so that causes that the whole thing should be a treifa. Even shehedim b'hem kolshu machmas drisa is treifa. So beneged the simanim atzma, if they start becoming red as a result of drisa, that makes it into a treifa. Halacha yudalef sofik drusa asura achet ibodik hedrusa vadois. Even if it's a sofik drusa, so nevertheless it's osir until it's nivdak. From here, the Maggid Mishnah is medayik that a drusa vadois can also be nivdak. The chiddush is that even if it's a sofik drusa, it also needs bdika. It needs bdika kedrusa vadois. Ketzad ari shenichnas lebein shvar. You have an ari that goes amongst shvar, and v'nimtza siperin begabi shalachim. And back of one of the shvarim, there's a siperin, there's a nail that came from his paw. Is choshen, now the question is, how did it get there? Choshen shem ari darse. We didn't really see the lion pounce upon it, but it's possible that the lion pounced upon it and he left the nail. What's the other possibility? The other possibility is that maybe the ari put its nails, its paw into the wall, and then over there it left its nail, and then when the share was like leaning on the wall, so that's how, or leaning next to the wall, so that's how this tziperin got onto the back of the share, which Weistois is a suffix. It's not pshat. This is considered a remote possibility, because if it would be a remote possibility, so maybe that wouldn't be the chiddush suffix drusa is mutter. The chiddush is that it is a possibility, but nevertheless, there's a possibility that the ari was deiris. And maybe there's two possibilities. So we say we have to be machmer. That's the it's ari shenichel ben shvarim nimtzat siper megabi shalachim cheshen shema ari darse. Ve'einem shema b'kesis nischachich. V'chein shul, a fox, a nemia or a martin shenichnas lebein oifes. V'hu sheisik, you don't hear the shul of the nemia or the nemia making any noise. And they're all screaming. Is choshen shemadaris. Over here, where choshen is also shemadaris, and that's why they're screaming. The reason why they're screaming is because he's being deiris. If he was making noise, and v'hei mekarken, and they're also making noise, so their noise is not a raya that he did anything like derisa. Whereas in the first case over there, we're saying, why are they screaming? If he's quiet, why are they screaming? So it must be they're screaming because they see that he's being deiris. They're mekarkerin. Masha'inkin, if he's screaming and they're screaming, he's noyim, and they're mekarkerin. So I mean, when he screams, it's called noyim. When they're screaming, it's called mekarkerin. But I'll call upon him, he's noyim v'hei mekarkerin. So then it's miyirasim and yimasim mekarkerin. You ask me, why are they mekarkerin? They're mekarkerin because they hear him screaming, so they're mekarkerin. We don't really have a yesod to be choishesh that there was a drisa. Of course, it was possible there was a drisa. But in the case where they're mekarkerin and he's quiet, so the fact that they're mekarkerin, even though he's quiet, is a raya that he was deiris. Masha'inkin, in the case where they're screaming and he's he's screaming and they're screaming, so that we don't have really a sod that there was a drisa. V'chein im kota reish echad mehem. So then also we could assume hine noch rogzei. We could assume that it was noch rogzei, and therefore the pashtus he wasn't. No, like this was saying they're mekarkerin, and he's quiet. So there's a svara that he was deiris. Masha'inkin, if he cut off the head of one of them, so then we could assume that bepashtus he wasn't deiris because he was not rugzei by being cut a reish echad, and that behem is obviously an avela. He not rugzei. V'cheinem shasik hu v'heim is also a cheshem shem hizik hayim mekarker. So I'll call upon. We're learning over here that there's a musik called a suffix drusa, and a suffix drusa you have to be baited. What's the case of suffix drusa? The Rambam says one suffix is that you see a tziperin in gabe of one of the shvarim. That's one tzir. Another tzir is where the behema went in, where the shul or the namya went in, and he was shaisik, and they were makarker. So in such a tzir, that's called a suffix drusa. Masha'inkin and a tzir where they're both screaming or they're both quiet, or even if it's taka that they were mekarkerin and he was shaisik, but lapel we see that he was kata reish echad mem, so then we assume that mistama he wasn't deis. Halacha yud beis suffix shnichnas lekanterif elei nichnas. A suffix drusa is aser, and a svek is mutter. That's the nekud of this din. Suffix shnichnas lekanterif elei nichnas, because you don't know b'chlal that it was nichnas lekanterif. In the case of the first case, Arisha Nichnas, we know Ari went in here. And we see that there's a tziperin and Gabi Shel Sher. The question is only, how did the tziperin get to the Gabi Shel Sher? But we know there was an Ariya. So Memela, we can see the Kechatim of Drusa. Over here, we don't know Bechlal that there was a data here. We see that there's a tziperin begabi Shel Sher. We don't know Bechlal that there was an Ariya. The suffix Shenichnas lekanterif elei nichnas. So Memela, since we don't know there was a Ariya, so then in Cheshen, even if we see a Tziperin Begabi, we're not Cheshen with Tziperin Begabi because we're not sure that there was an Ariya or there was a Teref. And even if there was a Teref, maybe what happened is that he stuck his hand into the wall and then the Sher took it from the wall. So it's a Svek. And v'yotzo v'reishim enatav dam etzavore. So we see that he's bleeding. The question is, why is he bleeding? Is also a cheshen leisham nitraf. Elaimrim shema be'etzim nizak. Maybe be'etzim nizak. And the amis, even if it's not be'etzim nizak, so the one that he was nizak from also lav dafka is from the terfim. And memela, so there's no hechrich to say that there was a union of. There's no yisod to say that there was a union of that there was a drisa here. Because we don't know Melchatchila that there was someone here that could be Davis. And on the other hand, there's a chash over here that he is Minoetzim. So that doesn't have a din of a Sofik Drus. So we consider a Sofik Drus is Osir, but a Svek is Mutter, or it could be even a Madrega, it's not even a Svek, it's Melchatchila, not a Sofik.